Why was dancing with the same person twice at a Regency assembly so meaningful? Today we're talking about assemblies, introductions, and dancing etiquette. What exactly is a Regency assembly? Who attended them? And why were introductions so important? Why does Mr. Darcy refuse to be introduced to anyone outside his own party? And finally, what did it mean socially and romantically if you dance with the same person twice? These are all questions that we'll answer in today's episode, and we'll also look at how Jane Austen signals Mr. Bingley's attraction to Jane Bennet really early in the novel through his behavior on the dance floor. Assemblies were large evening gatherings that brought together the local community for dancing, card playing, tea, food, conversation. Is it an assembly or is it a ball? This is a topic of debate and there are no clear defined rules, but some would say that if the guest list was below 200, then this could be considered a country dance, and that a ball signified something of bigger grandeur that would include an orchestra, elaborate decorations, and a more formal atmosphere. In chapters 3 and 4 of Pride and Prejudice, we see both words, assembly and ball, used interchangeably to describe the Meryton event. Public balls were often organized by a group of social elites or a subscription committee. Tickets or subscriptions were required for admission. For example, a 10-guinea subscription could get you admission to 12 balls over 12 weeks that would include dancing and suppers. Highly prestigious events, those that might be attended by the local aristocracy, were much more difficult to acquire tickets or subscriptions for unless you had some good connections. Common venues for these events could include assembly rooms. The town of Bath is known for having many such, but they could also include town halls, inns, or other subscription rooms. Invitations would typically be sent out 3 to 6 weeks in advance and were expected to be answered promptly, within 24 hours. Attendees generally came from respectable ranks of the local society. This could include gentry and landed families, any aristocracy or peers if they were present in the local neighborhood, military officers, clergy, wealthy professionals, and any respectable unmarried women who are accompanied by family or a chaperone. In the early 19th century, assemblies relied on a masters of ceremony to maintain decorum and facilitate introductions, especially between gentlemen and ladies wanting to dance with each other. But these introductions could also be made by mutual acquaintances, family members, the host, or the patroness. We saw in last week's episode that Mrs. Bennet was worried about there not being anyone to introduce her and her daughters, and would have had to have relied on Mrs. Long for an introduction if it could not be made by Mr. Bennet himself. This implies that a smaller event like the Meryton Assembly may not have had a Masters of Ceremony and therefore would depend on mutual acquaintances for introductions. Or perhaps this implies that rather than having a simple ballroom introduction, this may not have been enough to form a meaningful acquaintance between their two households. Mrs. Bennet is not interested in a casual passing acquaintance, but wants her daughters to be intimate friends with the Bingleys. We can also see that this might be her goal because as soon as the introduction and return visit on Mr. Bennet is made, Mrs. Bennet immediately sets out to invite Mr. Bingley over for dinner. But back to the ballroom. Formal introductions were required before speaking socially with a stranger. A gentleman was always introduced to a lady, as it was his honor to meet her. Introductions could serve as a form of social verification, a guarantee of respectability. A formal introduction not only determined who could dance with each other and who could speak with each other, but also who could visit each other socially after the event. We see in the novel Mr. Darcy's refusal to be introduced to anyone at the Meryton Assembly. This signals his aloofness, his pride, but also his deliberate withdrawal from the social obligations of the room. Mr. Darcy does not want to make any permanent friends here. Assemblies provided all sorts of entertainment. These include dancing, card tables, tea, supper, and musical performances. Each of these topics, including dancing, will receive their own further explorations in later episodes. Regency dancing follows strict choreographies and require cooperation between partners. Common dances include minuets, quadrilles, waltzes, gallops, and polkas. Dances could last a long time with multiple figures and repeated interactions. Partners stood in long lines facing each other, creating extended opportunities for conversation and observation. This is one reason why dancing was so socially significant. At smaller assemblies like the Meryton Assembly in Pride and Prejudice, there may have been closer to a dozen dances, while larger fashionable balls in places like Bath could continue much later and with many more dances. This is also why standing up with the same partner twice could be so significant. With so many ladies to choose from, so few dances, and we also read in the novel that many ladies were without a partner, Mr. Bingley choosing Jane twice would definitely attract some attention. Dancing twice with the same partner and signaling them out definitely would draw some attention. Basic etiquette says that a lady would never dance with the same partner 3 times. So we see here that Jane and Mr. Bingley dancing twice is perfectly respectable. But to Mrs. Bennet, this signals particular admiration, romantic interest, and the possibility of courtship. And Mrs. Bennet is not completely wrong about the first 2, as we see Jane Austen tells us through the narrator's voice exactly how Mr. Bingley feels. And as to Miss Bennet, he could not conceive an angel more beautiful. Miss Bennet was therefore established as a sweet girl, and their brother felt authorized by such commendation to think of her as he chose. So through all this, we see how Jane Austen uses the Meryton Assembly to set the stage for early impressions, quiet attractions, and the social dynamics of the novel. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the History in Pride and Prejudice. I really enjoyed researching it and writing it. If you would like to hear an audio recording of chapters 3 and 4 read out loud, then you can click this link or grab your copy of Pride and Prejudice and read it right now. Otherwise, I hope you'll stay tuned for next week's episode where we will read and discuss chapter 5 and talk about knighthoods and rank. Thank you so much for watching. I just wanted to mention that this is just a hobby channel. I'm not an expert, but I do love Jane Austen. I love the Regency era, and I love doing research and sharing what I found with you guys because knowing these facts really helped me to enjoy the novels more, and I hope that it could do the same for you guys. So if you like period dramas, slow burn romances, and emotionally devastating letters, then consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!